Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus. Steal away home. I ain't got long to stay here.
The largest slave revolt in American history took place in the territory that Jefferson was able to purchase from Napoleon after France lost Haiti. Napoleon had hoped to use Louisiana as a base from which to expand into North America. But the loss of Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, forced him to change his plans. He sold Louisiana to the United States in 1803. The new governor, William Claiborne, struggled to manage the various French, Spanish, and English-speaking populations, which included wealthy and poor whites, free blacks, African-American slaves, and African slaves. Slave labor was already widely used in Louisiana on sugar, cotton, and indigo plantations. Although they had never had a significant slave revolt, white planters were concerned that the 1791 revolution in the French colony of Saint-Domingue would spread to the French-speaking colony of Louisiana. In January 1811, slaves in New Orleans were enjoying a brief respite in their back-breaking work. The sugar harvest was in, and the slave owners allowed their slaves some freedom so that their masters could focus on the holidays. Charles Delon took advantage of this relaxing of the guard. A trusted slave driver and a slave himself, Delon had the freedom to travel across multiple plantations, ostensibly to work with other slave drivers to plan the harvest and to push slaves to work harder. He used this time to meet secretly with his lieutenants and plan an insurrection. After sundown on January 8th, Delon and about 25 others gathered on the Andre plantation. When Colonel Manuel Andre and his son Gilbert were asleep, the slaves attacked with axes. The slave army marched along the banks of the Mississippi River towards New Orleans. As they marched, they gathered more followers until hundreds of men followed behind Charles Delon and his lieutenants. Contemporary accounts suggest that the army may have swelled to between 200 to as many as 500 rebel slaves. On January 9th, Governor Claiborne, alerted to the impending attack on New Orleans, ordered army troops and militia in the city to march out to meet the rebels. Early on the morning of the 10th, the army troops surrounded the plantation of Jacques Fortier. In a brief battle, Andre's better-armed force shattered the slave army. Delon was captured the next day, January 11th. Unlike Gabriel Prosser, Delon did not get a trial. A witness described Delon's fate at the hands of the militia.
Had his hands chopped off, then shot in one thigh and then the other until they were both broken. Then was shot in the body, and before he had expired, he was put into a bundle of straw and roasted.
Other slaves were arrested and tried. 30 were executed, their heads put on pikes at the city gates. Almost 100 rebels in all were killed, either in battle or in the executions. Bodies of the dead rebels were displayed by planters and government officials, much as the Romans had lined their roads with the crucified army of Spartacus, a warning to all slaves who dreamed of freedom. But that dream was not easily suppressed. Denmark Vesey was a slave who achieved that dream for himself. But it was then replaced by a new dream of freedom for his fellow Africans and African Americans who were suffering under the yoke of slavery. A skilled carpenter, Vesey settled in Charleston to ply his trade. He became a respected member of the free black community in Charleston. But he was an angry man, and he went to the Christian Bible to find justification for his rage. Abolitionist Thomas Higginson reported that
he rendered himself perfectly familiar with all those parts of the scriptures which he thought he could pervert to his purpose, and would readily quote them to prove that slavery was contrary to the laws of God, that slaves were bound to attempt their emancipation, however shocking and bloody might be the consequences, and that such efforts would not only be pleasing to the Almighty, but they were absolutely enjoined, and their success predicted in the scriptures.
Vesey taught Bible lessons and preached sermons at Charleston's African Methodist Episcopal Church, and he used that venue as a means of gathering and organizing his followers. Literate and well-spoken, he drew a crowd of loyal followers. In addition to the Bible, Vesey drew inspiration from the Haitian Revolution. He even wrote to the government in Haiti to request assistance and planned to escape to Haiti if all went wrong. His own revolution was planned for a Sunday in July 1822. It was customary for large numbers of slaves working plantations in the country to enter Charleston on Sundays, the one day of the week that they had to themselves. Entire plantations of slaves were expected to remain in the city that evening, hidden away by blacks living in town. After seizing control of the city, Vesey's plan seems to have been to load his people into ships and sail for Haiti. Vesey insisted on keeping a tight control on information. He especially did not want house slaves to be brought in until the last moment, for these slaves often developed real and shared affection for their masters and those families. Unfortunately for him, this warning proved prophetic. One of his Confederates, William Paul, had trusted a house slave who then reported what he'd heard to his master. The master then shared the information with Charleston's mayor. Enough information was gathered that the state militia was called in to reinforce the city guard, but no general alarm was raised. Vesey recognized that the increased guard meant that he had been betrayed. He called off the uprising, but within a week, most of the leaders were arrested. Eventually, over 130 men were charged, 67 convicted, and 35, including Vesey, were hanged for conspiracy. Vesey's was the greatest slave revolt that never happened. Denmark Vesey might have been a preacher, but Nat Turner was a prophet. Gabriel's plot may have been the most audacious, Denmark's the most well-planned, but if measured in terms of deaths among the ruling class, Nat Turner's rebellion was the most successful by far. Born in Southampton County, Virginia, on October 2nd, 1800, the week before Gabriel was hanged, Nat Turner was marked for destiny. His mother and father told him that birthmarks on his head and chest indicated that he was meant for greatness. Like Vesey, Nat was extremely religious. He made a practice of fasting and prayer and reading the Bible. He believed he heard spirits talking to him, and he listened. Once he ran away from his master and was gone for a month. He felt commanded by the Spirit to return, and did so. He grew to believe that his destiny was not to achieve freedom simply for himself, but for his fellow slaves.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.